In the spring of 1945, in a makeshift Army field hospital somewhere in war-torn Germany, Sergeant William Hayes of the 1st Infantry Division pressed his Bronze Star into the hands of Lieutenant Catherine Bennett, the Army nurse who'd saved his life not once, but 3 times over the course of 6 months. First, when German machine gun fire had torn through his chest at the Rhine crossing, again when infection nearly killed him during recovery, and finally, when despair over his injuries had made him give up hope entirely. The medal had been awarded for valor during the Battle of the Bulge, for actions that had saved his entire platoon, for heroism that should have made William proud. But as he placed it in Catherine's palm that April morning, closing her fingers around the brass star and its ribbon, he told her something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. "This belongs to you. I was brave once for a few hours. You've been brave every day for years. You heal bodies and souls, and you do it without recognition or rest. If anyone deserves this, it's you." Catherine tried to refuse, tried to explain that she was just doing her job, that William had earned that medal through combat valor she could never match. But William insisted, and in that moment, surrounded by the wounded and dying, the smell of disinfectant and blood, the sounds of moaning soldiers and distant artillery, something shifted between the nurse and the soldier, transforming professional care into something deeper, more dangerous, and ultimately more meaningful than either of them had planned. This is the story of William and Catherine, the soldier who gave his medal to the woman who healed him, and how that gesture became the foundation of a love that survived war, distance, and wounds that went far deeper than flesh. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more untold wartime love stories that emerged from the crucible of war. Tell me, what's your name, soldier? William Hayes was 24 years old in the autumn of 1944, a combat infantryman with the Big Red One, the legendary 1st Infantry Division that had fought from North Africa to Sicily, Normandy, to the heart of Nazi Germany. He'd enlisted in early 1942, just months after Pearl Harbor, driven by the same patriotic fervor that swept millions of young American men into uniform. William came from rural Pennsylvania, the son of a coal miner, accustomed to hard work and the understanding that some things were worth fighting for. By late 1944, William had survived more combat than most soldiers would see in an entire war. He'd stormed Omaha Beach on D-Day, had fought through the hedgerows of Normandy, had participated in the liberation of Paris, had pushed into Belgium and Germany as part of the Allied drive toward victory. He'd been promoted to sergeant, had earned his squad's respect through competence and courage under fire, had somehow survived when so many others hadn't. But the war had changed him. The idealistic volunteer of 1942 had been replaced by a hardened combat veteran who'd seen too much death, who carried too many ghosts, who understood that surviving physically didn't mean surviving whole. William had nightmares about friends killed beside him, carried guilt about orders that had gotten men killed, questioned whether any cause justified the cost the war was extracting. The Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 pushed William to his breaking point. Hitler's desperate winter offensive caught Allied forces off guard, and William's division was thrown into the brutal fighting around Bastogne. For weeks, American forces battled in freezing conditions against fanatical German resistance, suffering horrific casualties in some of the war's bloodiest combat. It was during this battle that William performed the actions that would earn him the Bronze Star. His platoon had been pinned down by German machine gun fire, trapped in an exposed position with casualties mounting. William, recognizing that staying meant death for everyone, had single-handedly assaulted the German position, using grenades and his rifle, moving through intense fire with what his lieutenant later called complete disregard for his own safety. William had destroyed the machine gun nest and killed or captured its crew, allowing his platoon to withdraw to safety. He'd been recommended for the medal immediately. Though he wouldn't receive it for months, the bureaucracy of military awards moved slowly, even as the war accelerated toward conclusion. The Bulge finally ended in late January 1945, with Allied forces having held despite Germany's best efforts. But the division had been battered, and William's battalion needed time to refit and absorb replacements before continuing the push into Germany. Tanin was during this brief respite that William first met Lieutenant Catherine Bennett. Catherine was 26 years old in early 1945, an Army nurse with the 45th Field Hospital, which provided medical support to frontline units. She'd volunteered for the Army Nurse Corps in 1943, had trained at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, and had shipped to Europe in mid-1944, just after D-Day. Catherine came from a medical family in Virginia. Her father was a surgeon, her mother a nurse, and she'd grown up understanding that healing was both science and calling. Field hospital work was brutal. Catherine and her fellow nurses operated in conditions that would have been unacceptable in civilian medicine. Tents or damaged buildings, inadequate supplies, overwhelmed by casualties during major offensives, performing triage that meant deciding who could be saved and who was beyond help. She'd treated thousands of wounded soldiers over months of continuous operations, had seen injuries that would haunt her forever, had developed the emotional armor necessary to function in what was essentially a medical assembly line processing the results of industrial warfare. But the armor was incomplete. Catherine still felt every loss, still remembered the faces of soldiers she couldn't save, still carried the weight of knowing that her decisions, who got surgery first, who received the limited blood supplies, determined who lived and died. William arrived at Catherine's hospital in February 1945, during the brief lull between the Bulge and the final push into Germany. He'd been wounded during the final days of the battle, not seriously, just shrapnel wounds that required treatment and brief recovery. He was expected to rejoin his unit within 2 weeks. Catherine was working triage when William came through, assessing his injuries, ordering treatment, moving efficiently through the process that had become routine. But something about this sergeant caught her attention. Not his wounds, which were relatively minor, but his eyes. They held a haunted quality Catherine had seen in other combat veterans, a look that said he'd been through too much, survived too much, carried too much. She found herself checking on William more frequently than medical necessity required, told herself it was professional concern. Combat fatigue was as real as physical wounds, and soldiers who'd been pushed too hard sometimes broke in ways that weren't immediately visible. But it was more than that, though Catherine wouldn't admit it yet. William noticed the pretty nurse who seemed to pay extra attention to his recovery, noticed her efficiency under pressure, her kindness toward even the most difficult patients, the way she maintained professional composure despite the horrors she witnessed daily. He found himself looking forward to her rounds, to the brief conversations that broke the monotony of recovery, to the way she treated him like a person rather than just another wounded body. "You've been in combat a long time," Catherine observed one evening, checking William's bandages. It was a statement, not a question. "Since D-Day," William confirmed. "Before that, North Africa and Sicily. Feels like forever." "That's a long time to be in the line," Catherine said carefully. "How are you holding up? Beyond the physical injuries, I mean." William met her eyes, and Catherine saw something crack in his carefully maintained facade. "I'm tired," he admitted. "Bone tired. Soul tired. I've seen things, done things, that I know I'll never be able to forget. Lost too many friends, given too many orders that got people killed, and now they're sending me back for more because the war isn't over yet." "I'm sorry," Catherine said quietly. "I wish I could heal that kind of wound as easily as I can treat shrapnel." "You already do," William said. "Not just you, all the nurses. You remind us that there's still compassion in the world, still people who care whether we live or die. That matters more than you know." It was the most honest conversation Catherine had had with a patient in months. Most soldiers maintained tough guy personas, refused to acknowledge psychological wounds, pushed through with grim determination. William's willingness to be vulnerable, to admit he was struggling, moved Catherine in ways she couldn't fully articulate. Over the following days, their conversations deepened. William told Catherine about growing up in Pennsylvania coal country, about the patriotism that had motivated his enlistment, about the gradual disillusionment as war's reality replaced war's propaganda. Catherine told William about her medical family, about choosing nursing over medicine, about the challenge of maintaining humanity while processing an endless stream of broken bodies. And slowly, carefully, they both recognized that what was developing between them went beyond professional medical care. William returned to his unit in late February 1945, his physical wounds healed, ready to rejoin the final push into Germany. He said goodbye to Catherine professionally, thanked her for her care, pretended that 2 weeks in her hospital hadn't fundamentally changed how he thought about his survival and his future. But he couldn't stop thinking about the nurse who'd seen past his sergeant's stripes and combat decorations to the exhausted, traumatized man beneath. He carried her memory through the Rhine crossing in March, through the brutal combat as Allied forces punched deep into Germany, through the grinding advance toward Berlin, and then, on March 28, 1945, William was hit again. German machine gun fire caught him during an assault on a defended town, 3 rounds striking his chest. His body armor deflected some of the impact, but the trauma was severe. Broken ribs, pneumothorax, internal bleeding. He was evacuated immediately, once again to a field hospital. By chance or fate, it was Catherine's hospital. The same unit, now repositioned to support the advance into Germany. Catherine was working triage when William arrived, unconscious, badly wounded, his chances of survival uncertain. She recognized him immediately. Sergeant Hayes from Pennsylvania, the combat veteran with the tired eyes who'd been honest about his struggles. The soldier she'd spent 2 weeks treating in February, who'd occupied her thoughts far more than professional boundaries, suggested he should. Catherine made an immediate decision. "This one's mine," she told the triage officer. "I'm taking primary care." It was slightly irregular. Nurses didn't usually claim specific patients, but the hospital was overwhelmed and no one questioned it. Catherine personally oversaw William's treatment, stayed with him through surgery, monitored his recovery with an attention to detail that went beyond professional obligation. William regained consciousness 3 days later, confused and in pain. His first clear vision was Catherine's face hovering above him, checking his vital signs, adjusting his medication. "You," he managed to whisper. "You're here." "I'm here," Catherine confirmed, allowing herself a small smile. "You keep getting wounded and I keep patching you up. We should probably discuss this pattern." "I'll try to stop getting shot," William said weakly. "No promises, though." Over the following weeks, as William recovered from injuries that should have killed him, Catherine provided care that blended medical expertise with something more personal. She read to him when he couldn't sleep, wrote letters to his family when he was too weak, stayed past her shifts, talking about nothing and everything, and William, for the first time since the war began, felt something beyond just determination to survive. He felt hope. Hope that there might be a future worth living, that he might have something beyond just combat and survival, that Catherine Bennett represented possibilities he'd stopped believing existed. It was during this recovery that William's Bronze Star finally caught up with him. The medal, awarded for his actions during the Battle of the Bulge, arrived with official paperwork and a ceremony planned for when he was well enough to attend. Catherine was there when William received the news, saw the conflicted emotions cross his face as he read about his own heroism, recognized that military decorations meant complicated things to combat veterans. "You should be proud," Catherine said. "You saved your platoon. That matters. I did what had to be done, William said quietly. And people still died, including Germans I killed. I don't know how to feel about being rewarded for that. Catherine understood. She'd seen too many wounded German prisoners, too many enemy soldiers who were just scared boys like the Americans, to maintain simple ideas about heroism and villainy. William recovered slowly. The chest wounds had been severe, and recovery would take months. But by April 1945, as Germany's collapse accelerated and the war in Europe entered its final weeks, William was well enough to move around the hospital, help with light duties, contribute something beyond just being a patient. It was during this period that something crystallized between William and Catherine. The professional boundaries had long since blurred, replaced by something that both recognized but neither had named. They spent every possible moment together. William helping where he could in the hospital, Catherine spending her breaks at his bedside, both finding in each other something that felt like salvation from the war's darkness. On April 15, 1945, the hospital received news that the war in Europe would likely end within weeks. Germany was collapsing, Allied forces closing in from all sides, Hitler's regime in its death throes. The end was finally, miraculously approaching. That evening, William asked Catherine to walk with him outside the hospital. It was the first real privacy they'd had. The hospital was always crowded, always busy, but outside, in the mild spring air, they could finally talk without interruption. "The war's almost over," William said, stating the obvious. "I'll be discharged probably, sent home to Pennsylvania. You'll stay with the Army until they close the field hospitals, then go back to Virginia." "Yes," Catherine said, knowing where this was going. "I don't want to lose you," William said bluntly. "I know this is fast. I know we've only really known each other a couple of months. But Catherine, you've saved my life twice now. Not just medically. You've given me reasons to want to survive. I'm in love with you. I've been in love with you since February. Maybe since the first time we really talked." Catherine felt tears welling up. Tears she'd been holding back for weeks. "I love you too," she said simply. "I've been trying not to, trying to maintain professional distance, but I can't help it. William, you came into my hospital broken and tired, and somehow you reminded me why I became a nurse in the first place. Not just to treat wounds, but to help people heal completely. You made me want to be better at my job, better as a person." They kissed then, finally, in the spring darkness outside a German hospital. Two people who'd found each other in the worst of circumstances and built something real from shared trauma and healing. "Marry me," William said when they finally pulled apart. "I know it's crazy. I know the timing is terrible, but Catherine, I almost died twice in the past 6 months. Life's too short to wait for perfect circumstances. Marry me when the war ends. Come to Pennsylvania with me, or I'll come to Virginia with you, or we'll go somewhere entirely new. I don't care where, as long as we're together." "Yes," Catherine said without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you. As soon as this war is over and we're both free." Yes, on April 25, 1945, the day William was officially presented with his Bronze Star in a small ceremony at the hospital, he made a decision that shocked everyone present. The hospital commander pinned the medal on William's uniform, read the citation describing his valor during the Battle of the Bulge, shook his hand, and offered congratulations. And William immediately unpinned the medal, walked over to where Catherine was standing with the other nurses, and pressed it into her hands. "This belongs to you," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I was brave once for a few hours during one battle. You've been brave every day for years. You heal bodies and souls, and you do it without recognition or medals or any of the glory that combat soldiers get. You saved my life twice, Catherine. You saved my soul. If anyone deserves recognition for valor, for courage under fire, for doing impossible things under terrible conditions, it's you. It's every nurse in this hospital. Please take this. Not as my nurse, but as the woman I love, who represents everything worth fighting for. The hospital went silent. Nurses weren't supposed to receive combat decorations. The regulations were clear. But everyone present understood what William was doing, honoring not just Catherine, but all the medical personnel who'd worked miracles without recognition, who'd saved countless lives while facing dangers only slightly less intense than frontline combat. Catherine took the medal with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "William, I can't. This is yours." "It's yours now," William said firmly. "I'll get another medal eventually if anyone cares. But this one, this specific piece of brass and ribbon, belongs to the woman who healed me. Please keep it. Please wear it, and remember that what you do matters, that you're just as much a hero as any soldier who's ever carried a rifle." The hospital commander, Major Patterson, cleared his throat. "Sergeant Hayes, that's highly irregular. Miss Bennett can't officially accept a medal awarded to you." "Then unofficially," William said, "as a personal gift from one soldier to the woman he loves." "That's allowed, isn't it, sir?" Patterson looked at Catherine, at the assembled nurses who were all quietly crying now, at William's determined face. "Officially, no," he said carefully. "Unofficially, as a personal gift between two people who plan to marry? I suppose that's between you and Miss Bennett. But for the record, I saw nothing unusual here today. Catherine would keep that bronze star for the rest of her life, would wear it on special occasions, would tell the story of the soldier who valued her healing more than his own combat heroism." The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. Germany surrendered. Hitler was dead. The Nazi regime destroyed. William and Catherine, having survived everything the war threw at them, found themselves in a world finally, miraculously, at peace. They married on June 15, 1945, in a small ceremony in Germany attended by fellow soldiers and nurses, by the hospital staff who'd witnessed their relationship develop, by the men from William's platoon who'd survived the war. Catherine wore her Army nurse's uniform with William's bronze star pinned above her heart. William wore his dress uniform with a replacement bronze star that someone had requisitioned. They settled in Pennsylvania after being discharged, William using his GI Bill to study engineering, Catherine working at a veterans hospital helping wounded soldiers transition back to civilian life. They had 4 children, built a quiet life far from the violence that had brought them together, proved that love born in war could thrive in peace. William never regretted giving Catherine his medal. When people asked about it, and they did, constantly, seeing a woman wearing a bronze star, he'd tell the story proudly. "I earned it through a few hours of combat," he'd say. "She earned it through years of saving lives. The medal found its proper owner." Catherine would add, "William gave me his medal because he understood something most people don't, that healing takes just as much courage as fighting, that nurses face danger every day without recognition, that the people who put us back together after war, breaks us, deserve acknowledgement. That medal represents every nurse who's ever worked a field hospital, every medical person who saved lives while bombs fell. I wear it for all of them." On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1995, a journalist interviewing William and Catherine about their wartime romance asked if William ever wanted his original medal back. "Never," William said immediately. "That medal is exactly where it belongs, with the woman who saved my life and my soul. I got something far more valuable in return. I got Catherine. I got 50 years of marriage. I got a life worth living. Some soldier's bronze star for one night's work seems like a fair trade for that." William Hayes died in 2008 at age 88. Catherine lived another 7 years, dying in 2015 at age 96. She was buried wearing William's Bronze Star, the medal she'd carried for 70 years, the physical symbol of their love, and William's recognition of her courage. Their children donated their parents' wartime correspondence and memorabilia to the National World War II Museum, including William's replacement Bronze Star and the citation describing his actions during the Battle of the Bulge. Museum staff, who processed the donation, noted that William's replacement medal was accompanied by a card he'd written. "This medal replaced the one I gave to my wife Catherine in April 1945. That original medal was awarded for combat valor. I gave it to Catherine because she showed greater valor every day for years, healing soldiers while facing dangers civilians couldn't imagine. If I accomplished anything worthwhile during the war, it wasn't killing Germans during the Bulge. It was recognizing that the woman who healed me was braver than I'd ever been, and having the wisdom to honor that." The original medal is buried with Catherine, exactly where it belongs. The story of William Hayes and Catherine Bennett represents something profound about wartime relationships, that the bonds between healers and wounded often went deeper than patient-caregiver dynamics, that medical personnel witnessed and shared trauma in ways that created lasting connections, that the courage of those who mended broken bodies and spirits deserved recognition equal to combat valor. William's gesture, giving his combat medal to the nurse who healed him, was unusual but not unique. Other soldiers made similar gestures, recognizing that medical personnel who saved their lives deserved acknowledgement. But William's story became notable because he made the gesture publicly, turned it into a statement about the valor of healing, forced recognition of nurses' courage at a time when combat heroism overshadowed all other contributions. The soldier who gave his medal to the woman who healed him. It's a story about recognizing different forms of courage, about valuing healing as much as fighting, about understanding that the people who put soldiers back together after war breaks them are heroes deserving of recognition. William and Catherine's 70-year love story began with that gesture in a German field hospital in April 1945. The medal was just brass and ribbon, worth perhaps a few dollars. But what it represented: William's recognition of Catherine's courage, his understanding that healing was as heroic as combat, his love for the woman who'd saved his life and soul. That was priceless. They proved that sometimes the greatest act of valor isn't charging a machine gun nest, but acknowledging the quiet courage of those who heal our wounds, mend our spirits, and remind us that even in war's darkness, compassion and love can survive and flourish. But this wasn't the only time a soldier's gratitude transformed into something deeper than words could express. In our next story, you'll meet Captain James Morrison, a Marine who spent 3 years in a Japanese POW camp and emerged to find that the Red Cross worker who'd smuggled letters and medicine to prisoners, risking her life repeatedly, had been waiting for him the entire war, having fallen in love with a man she knew only through brief, forbidden exchanges that could have meant execution for both of them.